Hi everyone, this is Philip Martin, and this is OnFilm on video for July 8th, 2022, which is high summer, very high summer. We have this week's movie, because that's basically what you get during summer, is one big movie that comes in and occupies the theaters every week, is Thor: Love and Thunder. And it seems to be okay. I mean, I'm not a Marvel Cinematic Universe guy, and you guys know that if you've paid any attention to this. My experience with comic books was probably typical of people of my generation, in that I picked them up and put them down. I mean, by the time I was 11 or 12, I had pretty much moved on to other things. And one of the reasons I think that was because there just wasn't any. Like today, it's like there's comic book movies that are made for adults, and there's comic books that are made for adults. But back then, basically, comic books were made for 11, 12-year-olds, And once you get past that, there was the Spider-Man cartoons on TV, but those were really pitch lower, too. So it was sort of, you used to be able to age out of comic books without being, it was just something that happened. And now, because they're smart and because they know how to market, you can live with comic books your whole life, and that's fine. And they have more adult themes, and they have richer characters, and there's much more, in the universe building. So it's like, I understand it. I'm just saying I'm not part of it, and I'm not condemning it, even though some of you people do act a little squirrely. Just saying. I'm sure that all of you know that. All of you know somebody who's a little bit too into, Doctor Strange or something. But anyway, high summer is a weird thing, because I was like, basically summer is the imperial season for movies. It's like, this is the time when we make our money, and then we have the time in the fall where we show you like the stuff we think is going to win awards. And then we have the dead zone of that aftermath of that, which, lasts until summer comes on. And then summer lasts basically until award season comes around, though there is that little dead spot in September and, maybe through October, where you have the Toronto Film Festival and a couple other things going on. So it's not quite dead, but it's sort of dead. And this is my dead time, because I'll probably go see Thor. I'll probably go see Thor because, like I said, it is one of those Marvel movies. It's not just for the diehard fans. It's not. You don't have to know a whole lot going in to see this one. At least according to the reviews I've read. It is not just another chapter and verse of the ongoing, never-ending story. It is a discrete, adventure film that has some cool characters and maybe an adult sensibility who isn't, totally locked into that mythology can understand it. I don't know. I have trouble actually parsing some of these things because I just don't care that much. But I know, I see for the trailers it's got the raccoon in it, so I like the raccoon. And, Natalie Portman is Thor. That's pretty cool. So, it looks like it might be interesting. And Piers Marchant, who really knows the MCU, his review was, his basically said it was okay. Said there's some good. The way he wrote the review made me think that I might like it. Now, the Marvel heads out there may not like it as much. That's all right. That's all right. My big thing I want to talk about today, because I've been thinking about this. I said something a few weeks ago, or maybe I wrote it. I don't really remember, but I kind of said that Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick were sort of the same movie. And they are, in one way, structurally, the way, it builds and, the rhythm of the film basically is the same thing. They do a lot of callbacks to the old film.
there's a lot of similarities. You can really make the case that they're basically the same movie, just move the characters around a little bit. But I want to talk about this. I took Karen to see it. Karen and I went to see it, and watching it on the big screen, I kind of got a different idea. The one thing I want to point out is somebody who saw the movie and was in a position to actually think about the movie, and in something other than a fan way. I didn't just go to the movie to watch it. I was already writing about film a little bit and thinking about film a lot when the movie came out and the Top Gun came out. And I remember, thinking about how cheesy it was and how that didn't matter because of the, it's one of those movies that just sort of grabs you, picks you up, carries you here. And you can notice things about it. You can notice, like, that the dogfights aren't very realistic. You can notice that there's this, weird, or maybe, kind of weird, wonderful homoerotic, component running through. Not just the beach volleyball scene, but if you see, how often is Maverick in a towel or in his underwear or whatever? I mean, it's just sort of like, that's sort of interesting. That's an interesting aesthetic that Tony Scott brought to it. It was also kind of a low-budget movie. I mean, they got the cooperation of the Navy, which is what saves them. That really makes that, rip and roar and all that. But a lot of the effects were actually done in a studio, and they weren't all that great, especially by today's standards, if you watch the movie. The love story was pretty important to it. It seemed to me at the time to be the most important thing to it, though I don't think everybody else agreed. Everybody else sort of took it as this giant recruiting poster, and it was, and I'm sure it encouraged lots of people to sign up for the Navy, sign up to be an aviator. But I didn't, it's like the movie's fine. It's an action movie from the 80s. It's not. I'm writing a book. I didn't think about writing about it. Let's put it that way. I'm thinking about writing about different films. A lot of them from 60s, 70s, and 80s. And Top Gun was not one of the ones that came to mind. I mean, I think that now maybe with this one, I might even go back and do a Top Gun chapter. But if I was talking about the movies of the 80s, I would say, the Platoon's way more important to me than this movie. I mean, this is more in the lines of kind of a Ferris Bueller's Days Off, joins the Navy, sort of thing. Or it's not what I consider a serious movie, and that's fine. We shouldn't just have serious movies. I'm not saying that, but I just don't think it's not a serious drama. It's a soap opera come, overcoming story, underdog story. That's just like. In fact, Karen had it confused with An Officer and Gentleman, which I think is actually pretty astute, because it's sort of that kind of movie, And what Maverick is very self-aware, and it's kind of meta, and has this idea about itself. It's not, you can't pretend that they're making this in a vacuum. They know about the old movie. Obviously, they have that history. They even have history for these characters that we don't see. There should have been another movie. There should have been a movie that occurred, by my logic, I mean, just by the way they're referring back to things, when Pete meets Penny back. Spoiler alert, I have to put in this, is if you have not seen Top Gun Maverick and you care about spoilers, and I cannot imagine that there's anybody who cares enough to care about spoilers who has not seen the movie yet. But if you do, I'm going to spoil the movie here, so you can just drop out right now if you want. Okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. There should have been another movie, and they kind of act like there was another movie that occurred, set like 3.5 years ahead of this, when Pete meets Penny, and whatever happens, happens. But we don't see any of that. We just get, echoes of it through the kid and sort of the Penny's behavior toward Maverick and stuff like that, which is fine, I guess. But a lot of stuff went on off screen that we don't know about exactly. I mean, we can guess, and maybe that's all we need to do is guess. Okay. This is a movie that is sort of proof of concept that old things still matter. And I said that before in a way, in a flippant way, when I said it was a like 2-hour Cialis commercial, which it is. I mean, it is. It's going to get all the old guys fired up, to like hang out and play beach volleyball or football, dog fight football, which I've never heard of, which is kind of an interesting idea. Offense and defense at the same time. Yeah, all right. Concussion City. Here comes some CTE. But, they play it in the movie, which is a throwback to the beach volleyball scene, of course. Call back to that. And they have another callback where Miles Teller plays Great Balls of Fire on the piano in the bar, which goes back to the scene. And they even put the scene in there of Maverick, or young Maverick, and Anthony Edwards' Goose. Right. Goose is, of course, Miles Teller, Rooster's father. And Maverick has sort of been his sort of absentee surrogate father, because he was supposed to take care of this kid. And Rooster holds two big grudges against him. Number one, his dad's dead. His real dad is dead, and you've got to think that some of that had to do with Maverick, the ejection thing. But Maverick took steps to screw up his career, to keep him out of, to pull his papers so he couldn't go to the Top Gun or whatever. I mean, I think it was to the Naval Academy. So I guess that means that Miles Teller's character's like 4 years older than everybody else in the Top Gun thing now. They've been called back to, deal with this threat from this unnamed, which is really funny, unnamed, alluded to country, rogue nation that has this dangerous nuclear program that they're about to start up that you've got to take out. We can assume it's North Korea, but I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like they don't want to make anybody mad. They certainly don't want to make China mad. But anyway, so it's a movie with an enemy that's just a generic enemy, which is fine, because you don't really need a real, authentic enemy, because that's not the point. The point is they're going to do something impossible. And it's going to be a very Star Wars-y kind of Death Star sort of mission, where you have to shoot through this really narrow opening so you can destroy this thing. And if you miss, you have no second chance. So, it's preposterous. But it's got a little bit, primarily because Tom Cruise is very committed to this role. And you can tell he's committed to this role. And you just feel it. And you know that what he's trying to convince us of is that old things matter. And they can coexist with the new things, which is the F-14s aren't as good as the F-18s, but sometimes, depending on who the pilot is, the F-14's pretty good. The old school effects are great in this movie. They're just wonderful. I mean, it's sort of like it puts you in the plane with the actors who are actually in a plane. And you start thinking about things like, God, how expensive that is, and how much fun that would be, and how terrifying that would be, and how dangerous it really all is. And it's just, there's something different about doing something for real and doing something in front of a green screen. There just is. It's just the way it is. And our brains somehow know the difference and process the difference, especially now that we're so savvy and wised up about the way that movies trick us, and movies, use green screens and special effects and stuff like that. When I'm watching a film like, when I'm watching a show like The Old Man, I'm constantly wondering, well, is that background real, or is that background, Are they being superimposed on this? It's hard to tell. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes you can't tell. And knowing that this is real, which we know going in because we've heard all the stuff about it, it's really kind of thrilling, kind of cool. It's a very visceral kind of movie. It's ridiculous in the whole, plotting and all that. But that doesn't matter because we don't go to the movies to watch people do real ordinary things. I mean, sometimes that can be effective. You can have naturalistic movies where people are acting like people act in real life, in real time. And you can do something with that. And you can make good movies that way. But for the most part, most movies are just business ventures that are designed to, maximize the return of investment for the people who put their money in the project. So you get these roller coaster rides like this Top Gun thing, and you hope, if you're making them, I think, and if you're watching, you hope that there's something that comes through that's a little bit more than just the thrill ride aspect. I'm not sure that this quite is more than the thrill ride aspect, though a lot of people have praised this movie, and a lot of people have gone kind of over the top and talked about how it sort of is an example of, how old Hollywood and old movie star power can still, matter in today's world. And I think I agree with that. I think that they're not exactly wrong. They're not. It does take you someplace that feels authentic in a way that you felt when you were watching. It's like watching a real movie is what I mean. It's not like doing the real thing. It's like watching a real movie. It's like watching the movies you remember from whenever, if you see what I'm saying. It is proof of concept that you can have practical effects, and they can be better than the unlimitedness of CGI. And you can have, like a 56-year-old at the time, Tom Cruise, come in there and still command a room, even though he's around all these pretty, 20-somethings who are physically bigger than he is and younger and prettier, perhaps. But he still has whatever that inner light that comes out, that sort of movie star emanations. He still has them, and they still work. And they will probably work until, he's 80 or more. But would this actually happen in real life? No, of course not. Of course not. None of this would. Start from the very beginning when he steals, or he doesn't, where he disobeys orders and flies the jet away. That's not going to happen. He's not going to, do any of the stuff he does. The kids aren't going to be down with it. It's just not the way the world is. The physics are not that way. But wishfully, the story about a father, a surrogate father, a father figure, reconnecting with the son who is simultaneously trying to prove himself and trying to probably murder this guy. It's sort of it's sort of an interesting, sturdy dynamic. It's been around forever. It's not anything original. It's not even great. It's not even like I'm going to probably remember this movie, aside from the fact it's a Tom Cruise movie and they all kind of go on this certain shelf in my head. I'm not going to think about this much longer. It's just going to evaporate, and and then someday I'll think, oh yeah, that was pretty cool, and I'm trying not to react to some of the untoward overreaction. I mean,
People get so excited. People who see 5 movies a year sometimes get so excited about a certain movie and they think, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And that's fine for them. It's just that when it becomes kind of a talking point, it's sort of like, you should see this. You should see this. And maybe you should see this. And maybe think about this movie. And, there's just an awful lot. This is just another movie in a lot of ways. But it's fun. And it's the summer hit, summer blockbuster, unless Minions overtakes it, or whatever. The Black Phone overtakes it, whatever. It's sort of like we're getting one thing a week, and everything is sort of hit this year, except for Lightyear. Thor will probably hit this week, and then we'll go back, and we'll go back in a cycle where there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 movies, and there'll be streaming things coming out, and it'll be a little bit different environment, and then we'll be in this. Then we'll get into the fall when we have the award season, and it's just like, so there's no end. It's just a cycle that goes on and on and on, and we happen to be at this point of the Ferris wheel, and we're about to go down. But if you like summer movies, we're in high summer now, and it's hot, and I'll see you next week.